All right, welcome into the first installment of Downtown Browntown. Today's episode of Downtown Browntown is going to focus around the draft. I am super excited about the draft coming up. Absolutely just my favorite time of the sports year. I love looking at all the mock drafts. I love doing my own mock drafts. Just incredibly excited about the time to get around. So excited, give me 2 claps and a Ric Flair. Woo! So typically on the Take a Shot podcast, we'll do some shots today. I'm going to take it a little bit easy. Going to have a beer. If you want, enjoy one with me. I'm having a nice cold Yingling. Glad these are here to Missouri now. So today I'm going to really focus in on 2 things draft related here. I want to talk a little bit about maybe doing a little mock draft exercise with the top 10, and then getting a little Chief specific around where we're at there, what I think the needs are, and the direction that I do believe they'll end up going on draft night. So I'm really excited about the coverage that the Take a Shot podcast is going to have this week for you with the draft coverage. We'll have some pregame draft coverage. We'll have some post-draft coverage coming to you with our grades. We're not geniuses by any means, but we'll tell you what to expect for some players for our perspective. And I'm looking forward to draft night and being able to bring that coverage to our 7 or 8 listeners that we have. So without further ado, let's kick off the top 10 mock draft. This draft in particular, for somebody like myself who really enjoys doing mocks, really enjoys looking at prospects and the way that drafts could fall, this draft is driving me crazy because it seems like it's changing every day. It seems as if there's a lot of variables that could go into this draft, and as of late, there's been a lot of extra rumors going around. Be careful when you listen to those. Things get a little crazy with some of the rumor mill there, so we'll get into that. But this draft, just in general, it's unique, really. I'll go ahead and kick it off real quick. Obviously, Carolina is on the clock with the number 1 pick right now. It's becoming increasingly obvious Bryce Young's the choice, myself included, but a lot of people were duped into thinking maybe CJ Stroud was the guy. I think that Bryce was always the guy. I just think that they were vetting all options there, but I think Bryce has got to be the guy here. I think that he's got the most upside out of those 2. So Vegas knows a lot. Trust Vegas. He's the overwhelming betting odd right now to go number 1 overall. Case closed. So then we get to number 2, and this is where things really, really get interesting to me. The Texans, for as long as we've thought, up until maybe the last week or 2, we thought for sure they were going quarterback, right? Maybe not. A lot of reports out there that they're not sold on having to get a quarterback. They're not sold on, forcing themselves into taking one. They're open to trading the pick. They're open to taking a defensive player. So for my mock, I'm looking at no trades. Let's just look at the top 10 as it stands today. Draft night, that's not going to, stand true, but it's really hard to project trades and who's coming up and who's trading. I do think that this has a couple different options the Texans could do. I'm not going to do it, as I mentioned, I'm not going to do a trade in this scenario. So with my pick, they're going to take Will Anderson from Alabama, but I could see them going in a variety of different directions. I could see them trading the pick. I could see them taking the quarterback that they like, which I'm starting to hear maybe they like Will Levis. I think that the Texans at the end of draft night do end up with Will Levis somehow or another. That seems to kind of be the guy that they've zeroed in on. So maybe, with their second pick back at number 12, maybe that's where they look to get Levis. If he falls, maybe they start seeing that, hey, that's not going to happen, and they start start to move up a little bit. But I think in this scenario, they're going to go with the best available player. D'Amico Ryans, a defensive-minded head coach, is going to get the best player available at this point, Will Anderson, and really start to build a different culture in that defense. So now we got Arizona. And if you guys listen to my last mock on the Take a Shot podcast, I mocked Arizona trading out of this spot. And I still think that as long as CJ Stroud or Will Levis or even Anthony Richardson, some combination of them is available at this point, it's a strong likelihood that somebody's going to come up for that pick. I just don't see Arizona sitting at this point. Arizona needs to stockpile talent. They're not just one player away, so they need as much help as they can get. And if that's accumulating future assets, first round picks next year, second round picks this year, whatever it may be, they could get quite a haul for this pick. And I really do see them trading out of it. A team that I mocked it in my last mock, and I still think that it holds true. I really like Tennessee coming up in this spot, so we'll see. But in my mock this week, Arizona is going to take Tyree Wilson. If they're going to stay there, they're going to try to build with the best player available. Try to start over there. So they're going to roll with best player available. They're going to go with Tyree Wilson. So now we move to Indy. Now Indy's on the clock. What are we going to do there? Indianapolis, what are they looking at? Indy needs a quarterback. There's no question about that. Indy needs to go quarterback here. Everybody in the world knows it. So it's just at this point, who do they like? Who's available? Who do they like? I personally think they're going to go with the more talented quarterback, and that's CJ Stroud. There's been a lot of talk about CJ Stroud lately, maybe, poking at his character, saying that he didn't go to the Manning camp when he committed and he kind of ghosted them. When you hear those type of rumors, you got to think, who does that benefit? And maybe the Colts are kind of putting those rumors out to hopefully get him to drop to 4. Not saying that that's truth. I obviously have no insight in that, but maybe that's what their plan is there. The other option here would be a Will Levis. For the longest time, I thought that they were really enamored with Will Levis, but if CJ Stroud's sitting there, I think that's going to be hard for them to pass up. And let's be honest, there's some concerns around Will Levis. Will Levis puts mayonnaise in his coffee. That's just weird. But it gets weirder from there. He is deathly terrified of milk and has a milk phobia and has a hard time being in a lunchroom around milk. And also he eats his bananas whole. Yes, he eats the peels of his banana. That's weird. Just a weird cat. Obviously those are, ancillary things, but weird nonetheless. So now we move on to Seattle. Seattle's got 2 first-round picks, so they could go a lot of different directions here. Really excited to see what Seattle does here. They came off of a pretty good season last year, when nobody really thought they were going to do well, and they're in a perfect position now with, picking up Denver's pick here at number 5. They got a pick later in the draft as well. I see them maybe taking a swing here. Maybe taking that, Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith type model. And I think that Seattle looks at the board, knows they've got another first-round pick, and says, let's take a swing here and let's get our quarterback of the future. Obviously, we like what Gino's going to do for us in the short term. We just signed him to a great extension, but they can get out of that deal, I believe, after year 2. So even though it's a big contract, they're not locked into that contract for very long. So I think they're going to take Anthony Richardson here. It's a perfect spot for him. He's going to be able to come in and learn and model behind a pro's pro and somebody who's really faced adversity. So I think that great pairing there. Not saying it's going to turn out like Patrick Mahomes and Alex Smith. I think that's just, in impossible to try to replicate. But nonetheless, I think Anthony Richardson goes there. So now we're to number 6. Detroit's on the board. Detroit can go a lot of different directions here. Detroit, again, another team that had a great season and is picking high up here. After coming off of a pretty solid season, they got 2 first-round picks this year. So they can, again, they can take a little bit of a chance, just like Seattle did. I think that they take a swing in a different direction. They're going to try to build on their strength here. What's their strength? Getting after the quarterback. They've got Aiden Hutchinson that they just took number 2 last year. He really started to turn it on towards the end of the year. They got James Houston, a later round pick that absolutely just, shocked everybody with his performance. So very excited to see those 2 grow in year 2, but they're going to add to that defensive line here at number 6, and they're going to get arguably the best prospect in the draft in Jalen Carter. Everybody, has talked about, to nauseam about his legal troubles, all that good stuff. He's going to come in and be a wrecking force on that defense. He is not going on visits with any team that's outside of the top 10. There's a reason for that. His agent's smart enough. His agent's saying, okay, hey, you're not going further than 10. Like, you're not dropping past Philly. Philly will be the backstop there to take you. So I think he goes before there. I think Detroit goes ahead and pulls the trigger and says, let's do this. And then that defensive line gets super scary, and they've got another pick later in the draft. So now we get to Vegas. I don't know what Vegas is going to do. They're in such a weird spot. You go out and get Jimmy G, and you probably think, okay, like, quarterbacks on the board here, maybe this is the spot that Will Levis goes. Maybe they even think about trading up if their guy is CJ Stroud or their guy is Anthony Richardson, and they want to make sure they get him. But I don't know. I think Josh McDaniels is on the hot seat. I think he's got to start winning games there. He took over a playoff team and ran them into the ground. They just got rid of Derek Carr and brought in Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's a worse player. So you could argue, okay, hey, they got to go get a quarterback because of that. But on the flip side, they got to start winning games. And I think they look to the defense. That defense is atrocious. They look to the back end of that defense, and I think they're going to, go after a corner here. And the first corner is going to come off the board. Devin Witherspoon is going to be the first corner drafted, going to the Vegas Raiders. So now we bring up the Falcons. The Falcons could do a variety of things as well. That's what's so unique about this top 10 is no team is really pigeonholed into they have to get this person. And there's not like the shining prospect outside of, Will Anderson and Jalen Carter that are just got to have them. They don't really need a quarterback. And in this scenario, the quarterbacks are off the board. I think they're going to roll with Desmond Ridder. They're going to see what they got there for one more year. And I think that they're just going to try to really continue to build on that defense. They're playing in a weak division too. It's no secret that the NFC South is super, super soft. I say that now they're going to come out and they're going to be one of the better teams. These quarterbacks are just going to step up and, change the whole division. Probably not, but that's my luck. So I think the Falcons are going to look to defense. I think that they could, just like any team, use more people that get after the quarterback. So you start looking at the board. Who's left here at D tackle and defensive end that's worthy of a top pick? Tyree Wilson's off the board. Will Anderson's off the board. Jalen Carter's off the board. So you've already had 3 defensive linemen go in the first 7 picks. So then you start looking like, it might be a little thin there. The only reason that it's thin is because there's one person on the board that people are overanalyzing because of his size. Forget about the size. Look at the production. Look at what he does. Allow him to come in and get after the quarterback, and that's Nolan Smith. If Nolan Smith was just a hair bigger weight-wise and height-wise, he'd be right up there in that conversation with Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson. He absolutely gets after the quarterback. He reminds me a lot of Micah Parsons. A lot. He could be very versatile, do a lot of things. He can come off the edge. I think that would be a steal for the Falcons right there. So, number 8, Falcons select Nolan Smith. Let's see here. Chicago's on the board now. Number 9. Chicago traded the number 1 overall pick. Everybody knows that. This is their pick that they dropped back to. They committed by doing that to Justin Fields. Whether you believe in him, you don't. I think that he's going to be pretty good. I think that he showed a lot to be excited about coming into this next year. So then you got to say, okay, we got to give him resources. Well, you went and got DJ Moore. You traded a big asset for Chase Claypool, which I don't like that move, but you've already invested that asset. That's the number 32 pick that you traded for Chase Claypool. Anyways, I don't like that, but we'll move on. But you've invested in that room. You've got Darnell Mooney, who's coming off of a bad season, but the prior year played pretty well. He's got the weapons, right? Maybe you add some depth into those weapons a little bit later in the draft. But you got to protect him. You got to give him the chance to show that he can be in the pocket, not just have to run for his life on every single play. So we start to look at offensive line here. You could go in a variety of different ways. From what I've read, they've got somebody that they kind of feel comfortable with rolling at left tackle. So you could look and say, okay, let's go get the best right tackle, just the best pure blocker in this draft. And you could say, okay, Darnell Wright's that guy. Like, he's a stud, plug him in, day one starter. You know exactly what you're getting out of him. And he's probably going to be a 10-year vet and a Pro Bowler for, half of those years in the league. Great prospect. But the premium position is left tackle. You got the number 9 pick here in the draft. It wouldn't be the wrong thing to go with, Darnell, right? I wouldn't say that was bad, but go with the premium position. The premium position is left tackle. Go out and protect this young kid's blind side. And look at the board. My number 1 rated left tackle, Broderick Jones. He's a little bit raw, but just a freak of nature in size, strength, stamina. Watching his tape, I don't get super excited watching offensive linemen, just not my thing. But watching Broderick Jones, it's not technique or anything that I get excited about. He's headhunting. He is going after any and everybody in his way. He's trying to get to the second level. He's trying to find those little guys. Watch him in the national championship game. My goodness, just incredible. So Broderick Jones goes number 9 to Chicago. Love that pick for them. So then we got the Eagles. Eagles are on the clock. Again, Eagles got 2 picks here in the first round. So some exciting stuff there for them. They get to pick later in the draft. So again, they can kind of take a luxury pick here. Look around. Who's the best prospect available? What could move the needle for my team? They did get decimated on defense, losing some defensive linemen, losing some safety help, some corner. So you start looking around and you're like, this pick should probably go defense, but the value is just not there. The value is not here at 10, like we just talked about, 4 defensive linemen have already gone in the top 10. So now you're looking at maybe the 5th best defensive line prospect. The value is just not there to do that. I think you could look at a Christian Gonzalez and say, okay, let's retool some corner. I like that. But again, let's look at what really moves the needle for this team. What does this team do really well? This team runs the ball very well and runs a very strategic RPO offense. It starts with the running back and the quarterback. So lose Miles Sanders, got to replace that production somewhere. Bijan Robinson. A lot of people are going to say this is too high. I agree with those people. My draft is not what would I do if I was these teams. I'm looking at it from what do I think they will do. And I think that they're going to look and say Bijan Robinson is by far the best player left on the board. He's our highest rated player. We got 2 first-round picks. We're the defending NFC champions. Let's take a swing here, and let's get a generational talent at running back. So Eagles take Bijan Robinson. Very exciting stuff for them. See how it pans out. I'm not a huge fan of taking running backs in the first round. Look at what the Chiefs did with Isaiah Pacheco, getting him in the 7th round. There's value to be had later in the draft at running back, but there's no denying that Bijan Robinson is a generational type talent, and that would be quite the compliment and running mate for Jalen Hurts. Cool. So that's my top 10. Maybe before draft night, I'll go ahead and put out a full 32. May put it in a short, a YouTube short, just to get it out. But I wanted to, go a little more in depth with my top 10, give a little more reasoning behind things. And like I said, a lot can change. One pick could redo this entire first round and how it's going to fall. And it really starts with what the Texans do. The Texans is where the draft starts, and everything that I just said could be completely changed depending on what the Texans do. So we'll see how they approach it. We pretty sure Bryce Young's going to go 1. I feel pretty confident in that. So the draft really starts at 2, and we'll see how it goes. So let's shift gears here. Quick break. I'm going to take a drink of beer here. Again, hope you're drinking a beer along with me here. Cold Yingling. So refreshing. So let's talk about your hometown Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs pick number 31, last pick in the draft. Normally 32, but Dolphins don't have a first-round pick because they wanted to tamper. So Chiefs get to pick at 31. So really interesting a way to look at the first-round pick for the Kansas City Chiefs is look at the positions that they don't need and how many of those players do you think are going to come off the board before they draft. So they don't need a quarterback. I fully expect 4 quarterbacks to be off the board by the time the Chiefs draft. So take those. Now you get to pick from the 27 of the best prospects outside of the quarterbacks, right? Let's look at what other positions can we say that we don't really need. We're not going to take a running back in round 1. So now we get to pick from the 26th best. We're probably not going to take our corner in the first round. So I think there's going to be 2 corners, maybe 3. We'll go ahead and say 3 that come off the board before the Chiefs pick. I think, I obviously said Devin Witherspoon's going to come off the board. I think Christian Gonzalez is going to come off the board, and probably Keely Ringo is going to come off the board. So now the Chiefs have the pick between the 23 best prospects in the draft. We already said that there's going to be 4 defensive linemen that go pretty high. So now we're down to 19. But we're probably not getting a top defensive end or defensive tackle at that point. So that's kind of where it falls off. Maybe a couple tight ends come off the board and we get down to about 17. But realistically, every year there's only about, most people when they grade drafts, there's only about 15 to maybe 18 true first-round picks where people value them as a first-round value. Obviously, there's going to be more that go in the first round, but with the Chiefs picking at 31, it's almost a second-round pick. So you're looking for as much value as you can possibly get. So the Chiefs really have 3 needs. They could add another tackle. They really kind of uncertain on the right tackle side. Besides that, their left tackle, left guard, center, and right guard may be 4 of the best offensive linemen that you're going to find in the NFL. If they add somebody who's above average at right tackle, or Niang, or whoever they put over there can play slightly above average to average, that's going to be one of the top 5 offensive lines in all of football. That interior is scary. You add Jawan Taylor out there, just an absolute incredible athlete. So they could look to fill that right tackle spot. So I want to go through and maybe outline who I think are some of the best realistic fits. Obviously, like Broderick Jones would be great. I think Broderick Jones is going to be well gone before the Chiefs can pick. I really like Darnell Wright. I think Darnell Wright's going to be gone before the Chiefs pick, well before they pick. So if they want one of those guys, they're going to have to trade up. And I don't think Brett Veach is going to trade up for a tackle. I could be wrong. I just don't see him using future draft capital to go up and get one of those guys. If the draft starts to fall that way and, one of these premier guys is up to 25, 28, maybe they use a little bit of draft capital because the board fell that way. There's no receivers, there's no tackle or no defensive lineman that they like, first round grade wise. So maybe they use that scenario and say, okay, let's do that. I don't think the board's going to fall that way. So you start looking at who's realistic that could fall to that range where it's realistic to trade up or that they could fall all the way to 31. And keep in mind, they think Jawan Taylor is going to play left tackle. I think they fully believe that. I think Jawan Taylor fully believes that. Cool. But if they draft one of these left tackles, they're not going to try to switch two positions. They're not going to try to make a left tackle play right tackle and a right tackle play left tackle. Put them back at their regular positions and let them play the position that they know. So without further ado, the two guys that I think are the best fits, that are realistic fits, you got Paris Johnson from Ohio State. Great fit. I think he could do really well. Very athletic. Probably, from what I've read, the most pro-ready. Then you got Anton Harrison. Anton Harrison, great fit. The Oklahoma connection. Chiefs seem to really like Oklahoma offensive linemen. Creed Humphrey, Orlando Brown Jr. So there's a little bit of a connection there. But both are really athletic. You can tell that the Chiefs are valuing athleticism on the edges there, which when you've got Patrick Mahomes, you've really got to be as athletic as possible to keep up with him, right? Orlando Brown didn't test super athletic coming out of the draft, didn't really evolve into a super athletic guy, more of a power guy than a finesse guy. And the same with Andrew Wiley. So I think that if they're going to go tackle here, they're going to look for more finesse and more excitement there. They're going to look for more athleticism. Jawan Taylor, absolutely stud, athletic, freak. They're going to look to pair him with somebody if they're going to look in the first round. I don't think they're going to go tackle in the first round. My thought, they're probably going to look at trying to run Niang out there, or looking for his competition in maybe the second or third round. Defensive end. I think defensive end is still a need for this team. You've got George Karlaftis. You've got Charles Omenihu. Probably feel pretty good about those two, but in this league, you need as many pass rushers as you can get. You still don't have that true, hey, I believe this guy's a number one. I think George is probably going to evolve into that. He showed a lot of flash at the end. But again, you can never use too many pass rushers. So again, you start looking at, okay, who's going to be realistically available. If they stay at 31, I think King Felix out of K-State, probably looking, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. I'm not great at pronouncing names. I know Jeff's way worse at doing them if you've listened to the Take a Shot podcast, but I'm not going to try to pronounce that. We'll just call him King Felix. I think he fits the bigger style of defensive ends that the Chiefs like. So they could look at that and say, hey, we like this guy. He fell to us at 31. We feel he's the best value. Great. But if they want to move up and maybe go for a little higher potential, maybe they look at a Myles Murphy. That's probably going to have to be, if he starts to slide. I could see him going as early as, 12, 11. Yeah, probably, somewhere in that range. I could see him going as early as that. But I could see a slide going on him. He's a little bit raw, doesn't have a ton of experience. So maybe he slides a little bit. And if he starts to slide to that 18 to 20 mark, if the Chiefs have a really high grade on him, maybe they say, all right, let's move up. Let's see what we can put together in a package and get up there and get the guy that we have rated really high on our board. I think Myles Murphy has potential to be defensive end number one on a lot of teams throughout the league. He's got the potential, that's for sure. So the way I think the Chiefs are going to go in round one is receiver. The way I look at it, and it's the say it out loud test. If it's week one, the NFL season 2023, and the Chiefs are lining up Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and MVS as your 1, 2, and 3, I don't feel super confident in that. Not where I think, oh my gosh, I feel really good. Do I think they're going to win some games? Yeah, they can go win games. But is that a Super Bowl caliber receiver room? Probably not. It's just unknown. It could be, but it's unknown. You got Sky Moore. He had 250 yards last year. Just unknown. Was it a lack of targets? Was it he needs more time? We don't know. Kadarius Toney, they are raving about this guy. They are the Chiefs. The Chiefs are just raving about this guy. Any chance they get an opportunity to talk about him, they're raving on him. And I truly think that they believe in his potential. But even Brett Veach just said it in his press conference a few days ago. He's got to stay healthy. He has to prove that he can stay healthy. And then MVS. I think MVS is a great piece. I think that he brings a lot of value. But he's the deep threat. He's an over-the-top threat. He's a vertical threat. You need more than that from somebody who's going to be a number one or number two. He's kind of a one-trick pony. It's going deep. That was his game in Green Bay. That's been his game here so far. And him and Patrick are going to get on the same page. I think that they'll put a lot of effort into that. And a lot of those deep shots that were missed, I think we'll see more of those, which is going to raise his production. But you still need those underneath type guys, right? You still need those guys that can step up underneath. So when you say it like that, and then you factor in, you put it in your head, okay, well, what if Kadarius Toney has to miss 4 to 8 games next year because he's hurt? Then your wide receiver room's really thin. Then you're relying on guys and needing guys like Justin Watson and Richie James to step up. I don't feel great about that. And I'm not saying that a first-round receiver is going to come in here and be the bee's knees and blow the doors off the place. But we need somebody who can step in and be a long-term solution and really find that top-end talent. And then if all three of them hit, that being Sky Moore, Toney, and first-round rookie, right, you have a surplus. You're doing the opposite of what the Packers did with Aaron Rodgers. The Packers never gave Aaron Rodgers weapons, refused to. And that led to a lot of dysfunction in that organization. They missed a lot of opportunities because of that, because they didn't have playmakers. We can't let that be the case here in Kansas City. So that's why I think receiver is going to be the way they go. Now, they can look at one of two things. Do they want to try to replace Juju's production, or do they want to go with the typical Kansas City style receiver? I think if you're looking at ways to reproduce what Juju did, you're looking for somebody who's going to get open when you need it and be willing to go over the middle. But the bigger piece of that is get open. And the biggest technician of a route runner in this draft is Jordan Addison. Look at the way he runs routes. He always seems to be open. I mean, let's be honest. When he was at Pitt before he transferred to USC, he got Kenny Pickett drafted in the first round. That's one of the biggest reasons that Kenny Pickett got drafted, is because of how good Jordan Addison was. Now, Jordan Addison, compared to some of the other receivers that are first-round talents, lacks a little bit of explosiveness, but always seems to get open. He always is open. He can run those intermediate routes that Juju is running and get open and help pick up first downs and move the chains. And then you've got, I said it on my the last Take a Shot podcast, really like Jordan Addison. He was probably my draft crush at the time. That's changed, guys. I have watched more tape and more footage of Zay Flowers. My goodness. That is a Chiefs wide receiver if I've ever seen one. Explosive, fast, change of directions, good hands, finds a way to make a play after the catch, so good after the catch. He would fit in so well in this offense. But then you start to think, does that kind of overflow with what you already have with Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore? Sure. But if that's a style of receiver that you want, go and get more of them. Sure, he's only 5'9", and you've got other guys like that. We don't really have a tall receiver, and for the longest time, MVS is tall, but he's not that contested catch type guy. For the longest time, the Chiefs didn't really have that big receiver. They didn't rely on a big receiver. They had Sammy Watkins, but they ran with guys like Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman. Last year, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Justin Watson. They never really, their offense isn't really built around having, this big, tall, prototypical wide receiver. They're about speed, yards after the catch. They're about getting guys open. Zay Flowers fits that perfectly. Now, here's the catch with either one of those guys, Addison or Flowers. You're going to have to trade up. They're not falling all the way to 31. You're probably hoping that they fall to, the 18 to 20 range. And does that, what does that end up costing? Like, realistically, if the Chiefs want to move up to 18, what does that cost? If you follow the draft charts and what value says that you need to get to that point, you're going to have to give up, obviously, pick 31. You're going to have to give up your second round pick and probably next year's second round pick. But that's a splash. That's a splash on draft night. Imagine Kansas City, 3, 4, 500,000 people downtown at the draft outside Union Station. Pick number 18 rolls up. And guys, there's some teams that we just talked about that have 2 first-round picks, and they're in that range. Detroit, Seattle, they're right there in that same range. They may say, okay, hey, we took our swing in the top 10. Why don't we stockpile some picks here and build for the future even more? Let's see where we can really build some value here. So 18, 20, wherever it is, they're on the board. And your Kansas City Chiefs trade up. Roger Goodell comes out. The Kansas City Chiefs have traded up to pick number 18, and they select Zay Flowers, wide receiver, Boston College. That place goes crazy. And it's not about winning the night in April. Like, that's not what Brett Veach is about. That's not what this team is about. Not what the organization is about. The team is about winning in February. But it starts with winning in April. And a move like that is a splash. It's exciting. But I also think it's the best and right move, because that's the one group out of the 3 that we just talked about that I don't feel 100% or even probably 90% comfortable going into next year. I feel comfortable with going into next year with, Lucas Niang. If they don't draft a tackle early, that tells me that they feel good about where Lucas Niang is. If they don't draft a defensive end, they feel good about the younger guys that they have, and they probably feel confident that they're going to be able to go out and get one of the free agents that is available, like Frank Clark or the guy from Cincinnati. I'm drawing a blank that came here last year. Anyways, one of those 2 guys would be available, and they'd be able to bring them back. So they feel confident about that. I don't feel that way about receiver. If this is what we roll out there with receiver, I think that we're just setting ourselves up to pay a premium at the trade deadline because we need one, and we're going to go pick one up at the trade deadline next year, which is going to cost us more. So I look at it and I say, let's go up and make a splash. I like Zay Flowers, just explosive. So that's kind of where I'm at with where the Chiefs are going to do, what my top 10 is. And as we get a little bit closer, maybe I'll throw out, like I said, my top 32 or my top 31 in a YouTube short, show you guys what I'm thinking there. But I hope that you enjoyed taking a trip to downtown Browntown. Hope you enjoyed having a beer with me, and we will all talk soon.